Welcome back to the Keep Looking Up podcast. I'm your host, Caroline Kraddick. Y'all, this week was a doozy in such a good way. I have been dying to interview Jaret Reddick from Bowling for Soup for a really long time. I've known him for a while. We have performed at the same events as each other, but I have been dying to have a heart-to-heart with him because he is such a big presence. He is hilarious. But you can tell that he has a deeper side, and we really got into that on this episode, and I'm just so thankful that he felt comfortable and vulnerable enough to share with us, and I took a lot away from this episode, and I think y'all will too. So with that being said, let's introduce Jaret Reddick to the podcast. Okay, Jaret, I'm so excited to talk to you today. You are a native Texan like me, and I know you have grown up listening to country music, and I know both of your parents were big into country. Tell me more about your upbringing and how music was part of your childhood.
Yeah, it's funny. No one around me was a musician. My mom played a little piano, kind of grew up playing in the church, and that kind of thing. And we did have a piano in the house, but it was really just music was around us all the time, and we took a lot of car trips. I'm an 80s kid. So, there's a lot of road trips, a lot of various locations. I mean, even when we went to Europe when I was 13 and we rented a car and drove around Europe, I mean, the full on Griswold vacation. I mean, it was ridiculous. But music was always playing in the car, always playing in the house. And speaking of the Griswolds, I mean, that scene in the first vacation where they're rounding the corner and the parents are singing at the top of their lungs and the kids are rolling their eyes. That was my reality. I mean, they just sang all the time and she harmonized with them all the time. And I remember telling her one day, Mom, you're singing it wrong, because I just didn't understand what was happening, like with the harmony thing. And then once that kicked in, I was like, my goodness, she inadvertently taught me literally how to harmonize, because I do the same thing. I don't ever sing the main part when I'm listening to music. I always sing the harmony. And so between my mom and the Eagles, that's pretty much where I got that. But yeah, a lot of Kenny Rogers, a lot of, but they were, Willie Nelson and Waylon, but it was also Donna Summer and Neil Diamond and all around that. So musical bug hit me pretty hard. It's a very similar story, I think, to a lot of people. We were at some hotel one time and there was a band that was doing sort of the Sha Na Na thing. And I was just completely mesmerized by the whole thing. I just, was locked in. And I remember it vividly because I remember my parents just laughing because I wouldn't eat my food. I was just staring at this band and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And
do you remember how old you were?
Yeah, I was probably around 6 there,
Oh, wow.
So, but it really wasn't until I was about 13 that I got the bug to actually start playing music.
And what'd you start with? Did you start with guitar? Were you singing first?
Yeah, I started playing drums actually. I remember this vividly. There's actually a quote from me that my friend of mine hung up on my wall or framed for me and hung up on my wall that reminds me each day of just that first day when it all happened for me. And I was in the 6th grade and I had finished my multiplication speed test and I got 100. And if you got 100 on your speed test, you did it in under 2 minutes, you got the rest of the day for free. And if you didn't, then you had to sit up in the class and like actually do work. Mm-hmm. And so, I would nail that pretty quick and go back there. And I always had free time, whatever day that was. And I always found school to be fairly easy. And so I didn't really have to try, which I understand is a full on blessing. Because I know I just from having kids that it can be a struggle. But for me, it was pretty just, just came very natural. But anyway, that I digress. I was back in the back of the classroom and this kid, Greg Norman, had his Walkman there. And I heard Ozzy Osbourne Crazy Train for the first time. And what is funny about that story is this had to have been 1982 or so. It's probably 10, 11 maybe. Ozzy was the Prince of Darkness back then. He was so scary, and it was just this whole like really, really just untouchable thing. And now, of course, he's there, his songs are in the Troll movie, and we hear it on all the sporting events and all that. So, but to me, it was life changing. And but Greg had a guitar, and his brother had a drum set in his room, and I thought that is so cool. Like all that's in his room is a bed and a drum set, and so I was quickly the same. I had a pretty much, there was a bed and everything else thrown in the closet and a drum set in my room, and it stayed like that all through high school.
That's amazing. What did you do after high school? I know Bowling for Soup started in '94. You were in Wichita Falls.
Yeah.
Tell me about the conception of Bowling for Soup and what that looked like.
Yeah, so I mean, I played music throughout school, and I was actually into metal. Ozzy led to all of the glam stuff that I really liked, and then that got heavier and heavier and heavier, and until I was in just like crazy, like just death metal. And I'd started singing because we couldn't find a singer, and our bass player could play bass, and we knew like 5 bass players. So Wichita Falls was very incestuous musically, in that like you just sort of like picked from the pool of the guys when you needed one, and bands were just always breaking up and reforming. And mine tended to stay together, and as it's the first time I've really ever thought about this, actually, which is funny. It's 28 years of talking about myself. I never thought about this, but I wasn't in a lot of bands. Mine pretty much stayed together. We had some member changes along the way, but I just sort of always had a way of being able to pick the right guys. And anyway, so I had a girlfriend when I was 17 whose dad had started selling toys, bicycles and skateboards and stuff on the side of the road on weekends. And I started helping him. And it wasn't long before we actually had a store. And a few years later, while I was in college, we had about 8 of them it was kind of like the Spirit Halloween model. We would just open up at Christmas time. Mm-hmm. And so I was doing that while I was going to college, and I graduated from college in '94. So kind of to speed up to the Bowling for Soup thing, because it's a little bit of a whirlwind here. I got 2 degrees from Midwestern State University. The toy store kind of hit bottom once Nintendo became a really big thing. I really couldn't compete with that anymore. And so the same girl's dad, his brother had moved to town and knew how to build houses. And so he just taught us to build houses. So we built a couple of houses, and our third one didn't sell because a coin-operated car wash came into the neighborhood and everybody sold their lots. And so I built above ground swimming pools for a summer. And that gets us to about 96. Bowling for Soup had started in 94 as just, us messing around. I really it was never really something that we were going to do, forever. It was, in Wichita Falls, the same guys that I played music with back then are still playing music together, in various bands. It's so crazy because it's really all there is to do.
Right.
And so, so anyway, so fast forward, we started in 94, fast forward to 96. And we had released 2 albums on our own, and we're doing pretty well in a few cities, namely Wichita, not Wichita Falls. Actually, we could not do well there, but we were starting to do really well in Denton, and had relocated to Denton. We were starting to do well in Abilene and San Angelo, and really just working our way to try to get a foot into like Dallas proper at that time. And we played this show in Abilene, Texas, and we had a song on the radio for a little bit there, and there was 4,000 people there. We were opening up for a band called The Hunger, and something clicked in me that night. I walked off stage, and we were just sweaty. I have a photo of us actually right after that show it brings back this exact feeling that I had. And we went to this makeshift dressing room we had because it was in this conference center type place, and I was quiet, and I was just like told everybody that was in there was some hangers on and some girlfriends or whatever, and I was just like, hey, can you guys give us a minute? And I just said to the guys, I was like, hey guys, I think I have this figured out. Like, I think we can do this, like really do it. And here I was, in my early mid-20s or mid-20s, I guess. And I had 3 companies and I had 2 college degrees, and I really never had any fun. And so I was just
Right.
like, let's just give this a shot. What's the worst that could happen,
Yeah.
And Chris had graduated from college too, and Eric was about halfway through, and Lance, our original drummer, had graduated and had a really flexible job. And so it was just wheels off at that point. 96, we just went for it. And it was all about, the deal is that you had to put the band first. And that meant you were going to miss birthday parties and funerals and weddings. And you were going to probably have some relationships go bad. And, it was going to be a really hard life. And it was a very hard life for till about 2003, 2004. But it was the best times of our lives as well, because it was just us. It was like the 4 of us against the world. And Gary joined shortly after that. Lance left on really good terms. Lance, actually, the original drummer of Bowling for Soup, was my best friend since I was 5 years old. Yeah, we played t-ball together. And so he left on great terms. He just didn't want to tour. He liked his job. He liked his girl. He liked his family. And we didn't have any of that stuff, we had families, but we never saw them.
Right.
And so, but yeah, that was it. That was pretty much like when we decided to really, really go for it.
So that's a long time from 96 to 02, 03, 04 when you started becoming really
Yeah.
popular. Did you ever have a moment where you were like, screw this, I'm done, I'm going to go back and like live a normal life? Or did you just have this perseverance that got you through?
Perseverance was a big part of all of it for us. There's one particular time. So we had signed with Jive in 2000 and of course learned really quickly that that the dream was not necessarily the dream. We were all of a sudden, it was like, hey, you guys get on the road and y'all go play here at this radio station or this radio station, whatever, and they're going to give you $100. And it's like we were making way more money when we weren't on a record label because my dog was just barking too.
Oliver, knock it off.
But we were making way more money when we were just a club band here in Dallas. And all of a sudden here we are driving around the country and playing, and sometimes there'd be crowds, but we weren't making any money. So it was and then at the same time we were blowing up in the UK. The Bitch song had started to hit there. This is about 2000, right around 2001. So, and we were on tour. We played a couple of shows in California, and then we got stiffed by a promoter in San Jose, and we had $0, an empty gas tank, and no way to make the next 2 shows. It was just the band and 2 crew guys. One of them is still with us, our sound guy, Ido. And we had to literally just figure out a way to get home, skip those last 2 shows. And it was so quiet, from LA to home is 23 hours. And it was very, very quiet in that van. And I think everybody kind of took stock in, what it is we were doing. We were very lucky because the next week we had a Dallas, whatever it is, West End Art Festival or some kind of a thing that we were already committed to. And so I think during that week is the only time until around 2013 where, life started to kind of buckle. And we can talk about that in a second if you'd like.
Yeah.
But that's the only time where I think collectively and for me personally, and perhaps the other guys, where it was like, man, I don't know, it's embarrassing. It's like, we're supposed to be on this big record label, Jive Records, and we're supposed to have this huge career and it's not what we thought it was going to be. And it's just, even the stories that we had to tell were sort of the same. It was just like, hey, we got really drunk the other night and this, and but that show happened. And of course we were kind of the kings of Deep Ellum by then, here in Dallas, by 2002. at least I always talk about, and you're familiar with this, but Dallas, live bands go in waves. So like when Bowling for Soup was coming up, it was the Nixons and the Toadies and Tripping Daisy. And then when it was our turn, it was us and Jibe and Flicker Stick and a couple other bands that went on, The Vanished, and a couple of other bands that went on to do some stuff. And so it was our turn then. And so in Dallas, we kind of just killed. And luckily that show, kind of reignited everything. And we had some, and again, we had stuff going in the UK. I think an article came out where we got a cover or something, and just, everything just sort of reignited. And again, it was still hard. But until, it was it was halfway through 2003 when Girl, the Bad Guys Want finally hit that we actually could pay rent on an actual place to live.
And that's such a long time. And that's
It's
what people don't realize, like from the inception to where you were then, takes so much persistence. And it's such a head game. It's such a mind game.
Yeah, it really was. And I mean, and we tell this story all the time, and it's, it makes it, some of it makes us sound like old men, because it's funny, because I was still managing the band and booking a band and tour managing our band and all of that from payphones, and I had a beeper, and that was all up until, think about it. We didn't have MapQuest until the turn of the century. We were using
literal maps.
atlases, like literal maps. It was which was fun. I mean, we had this game where we would drive into a town and try to find the venue without asking where it was. So it's like you would just follow the signs to the college and look around there, and then you'd follow the signs to downtown and look around there. And it was amazing how often we would find it. But we would go out for a month on tour, and I had this book that was called the Bible, and all it was this about the size of a Bible, fold over binder that had all the phone numbers, all my notes, all of just anything we were doing, it was just Bowling for Soup fitness thing, but it also held all the money. And at the end of every trip, the six of us, because crew guys have always been treated as if they're in the band, divided up the money. And sometimes you got $100 to go live off of until we left again. And sometimes you got 50. And it was hard. I mean, it was, like I said, it's funny now, but I honestly did not have a place to live for 2 years. Like I stayed with friends or people, or if I'm being honest, girls, and you just survived, and but it was like that for everybody, all of us.
I have so many thoughts because you have been around for so long. I want to talk more about Bowling for Soup, but I think people know and love Bowling for Soup. I want to hear more about, you've talked about your mental health stuff as well. Yeah. And then I want to talk about also the trajectory from like using a literal atlas to now where you're on TikTok and you're posting videos and you're seeing all these Gen Zers. Like I've seen you on my For You page with kids doing covers of your songs. I want to talk about that. And then I want to talk about the mental health stuff. So how did you, hang on, let me phrase this correctly. Are you just always into keeping up with the times, or did you see TikTok as just an opportunity to get your music out there for the younger generation?
I have always tried to keep up. We were kind of one of the first bands that I knew of that had an actual like functioning website that got updated all the time. And this was back in the day where you would try to get people to go to your website and spend time there. Like we would, there was like actual stuff to do on our website. And of course, obviously that's one of the things that's changed so much. Everything needs to be on one page and super clear. And, so unlike it's funny, there's a generational gap for sure. And there's a lot of my friends that have been able to change and navigate it. And there's a lot of my friends that haven't. And luckily there's still ways to go around it. I mean, you just have to be present. You have to do content and all this. So yes. So the thing is I've managed to always sort of, once Twitter became a thing, I remember my friend Joe from the band Patent Pending was like, you got to do this Twitter. And I'm like, I'm going to start this. And I was just obsessed. And I quickly, did really really well on Twitter, and I remember Foursquare where you used to
Oh
go
yeah.
check in. Like I
Yeah.
was the governor of like 140 places, like or the mayor. Yeah, I was the mayor of like
Mhm.
140 places or something, and just because I was just really really strict about it. And then Instagram, once I focused on that, that went well for me. I skipped Snapchat, and still have never done that. TikTok was interesting for me because I actually wanted to get into it like 2, 3 years ago. And
Mhm.
people just kept telling me, like, oh, it's just for kids. Don't worry about it. It's just for kids. Don't worry about it. And I would do a video every once in a while. And like, but so finally, the first time I ever made a video, um, and I guess this is how they get you, you know. But I in the first week I was at 80,000 followers, which was double what I have on Instagram,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I've been working on Instagram for 10 years. Now of course I'm at 110 now, so it's not as easy to keep going in that.
Right. They
They
go
don't let
viral.
yeah they don't
Right.
let you keep doing that, but still I was just like, what? And then so the other thing that I noticed is, man, the people on here are really nice for the most part, like
I
unless
agree.
yeah, I think because I have this thing where it's like, Facebook is just sort of like, it is what it is. It's you just really, it only should be to post pictures of your kids, and we should all get off there.
Mhm.
But YouTube is just, everybody is so mean. I mean, just
Yeah.
it is like I can't read stuff. I mean,
Savage. Yeah.
I've like since the mental health and the weight gain and all that stuff for me, like I it's brutal. I mean, and I'm very lucky in that my hardcore fan base pretty much defends me so I don't have to, but I'm
Mhm.
I'm pretty quick. I mean, me. I mean,
Yeah.
okay, right? I mean, I'm pretty fast, and I'm kind of a guy you don't want to mess with. So I have to
Mhm.
stay. I mean, mentally anyway. I'm physically, you can beat me up or whatever. But like I want to lash back. And so, but man, once I got on TikTok, I was just like, my God, everybody here is so nice.
Nice.
And
Yeah. I feel way more comfortable posting on TikTok than any other app because I feel like it's going to be more well received there than other apps
yeah,
for sure.
absolutely. And that's what I keep telling people. And I think it's, and I here's something actually that just happened to me today, not to me, but people are posting pictures or videos of Motley Crue out on their tour. And Vince Neil's had a bunch of trouble with weight and just being
Mhm.
able to actually carry a tune and all that. And it's the same sort of brutality. So it's like, oh my God, that generation is actually, they're coming over here now,
Yeah.
like it was bound to happen because TikTok is still so young. Like we all think about it being huge, and it is, but Facebook, what we're 20 years in on that,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
it's like, think about it. I mean, what TikTok's going to be, and especially if we talk about it as artists, and using it as a platform. Like right now, it's pretty hard to use TikTok as like a springboard for your band. I mean, you can do it and people have done it, but really you just need to be sort of out there building your brand and who you are and all that. But
I agree. Well, with the TikTok thing, I wanted to see your opinion on something with the genres because I feel like in the last, because I've been putting out music and I know in the past, if you've wanted to, this is going to go talk, we're going to move into talking about your country album because when Taylor Swift did the transition from pop, from country to pop, that
mm-hmm.
was strategic. And she'd been working on it for years. But I feel like with social media, and radio and TikTok and all of this, genres are becoming kind of obsolete. Do you
Yeah.
agree with that?
Yeah, I do. I think the waters have been sort of muddying for the last 4 decades. Actually, I mean, if you
Yeah,
go back
yeah,
to it, I mean, again, like I said, I was an '80s kid, so like when I was in high school, you dressed like what you listened to, and those are the people that you hung out with. So if you were a
right.
cowboy, you hung out with cowboys. If you were a freak or a rocker or whatever, you hung out with those guys. And so like all my friends had really long hair, and we all wore the same kind of t-shirts. We all listened to the same stuff. And that's really the way that it was. And that, to me, it's like even going to schools when my kids were in school, my son Jack is still in high school, and it's hilarious to me because it's like there's no standouts as far as kids are concerned. They
No,
all
yeah,
look exactly the same. Like they
yeah,
all dress identical. And it's
Mhm.
like you got the one kid that will have on a Slipknot shirt or whatever, but still they don't, it's not like that, like they look any different. They just sort of all look the same.
Yeah.
And which I think is great, because again, it just shows that we're, I hope, both, in all aspects of life, culturally and just, musically and all of that, we can just all kind of just become one thing, and it won't matter what you listen to or what you wear or whatever. But yeah, that's the thing is what's happened with music too, is there's been so many things like rap and rock crossovers, and like you said, Taylor Swift, whatever. But think about even like Faith Hill crossing over into pop music, and
Yeah,
all
Shania. Yeah.
Shania, all of that. So there's
Mhm.
been so much of that now that people aren't, it's not, the gates are just sort of down, like where it's like, oh, well, this station could never play this, or you'd never hear a DJ play. That's a great example, actually. A Shania Twain into Bowling for Soup, you'd never hear that. And now it's, if you don't hear that, you're like, man, this guy really is, needs
Out of
to
touch. Yeah.
branch out a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, and so yeah, and I think musically too, there's guys out there that are just changing their own sounds and all this. For me, my venture into country is something that's just been coming, and I just think it's an easy transition for me just because of where I come from, and
Mhm.
and what I've really heard from everybody who's already within the country world. They hear, oh, Jaret Reddick from Bowling for Soup did a country album, and it's pretty much 98%. Oh, that makes sense. I mean, I could see that.
Okay. Yeah, that was my next question is
Yeah.
how, because I know on this album, I'm obsessed with it too, because you're also hilarious and some of it's very tongue in cheek. But how did you get, like, you have Uncle Cracker, and I saw Cody Canada from Cross Canadian Ragweed, who I grew up
Yeah.
with as well, who I'm
Mhm.
obsessed with. How did you get those kind of people? And I wanted to know like more about how receptive they were to you kind of transitioning into country.
It was actually so easy. I had to stop because a big part of doing this country record was I didn't want it to be seen as a novelty, because Bowling for Soup is
Mhm.
already sort of a novelty within our own self. Like
Right.
we helped create a genre, and still within that genre, we're sort of still the class clown of it, because we never really
Mhm.
went out and made a serious effort to be serious.
Right.
Which has worked in our favor because our crowds are bigger now than they ever have been, and because we're bringing the
A wider
happiness.
reach because
Yeah,
of it.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, and the Radio Disney stuff, and all of that.
Right.
um and so yeah, it was actually very easy. I've known Uncle Cracker for a very long time, because we had hits around the same time, so we would play radio shows together. That was an easy one. Cody Canada, again. uh Cross Canadian Ragweed and Bowling for Soup did so many college shows together back in the day, and we're both
Oh, that
big
makes
fans.
sense.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
we were
yeah.
together all the time. So I
That makes sense.
actually have, and I've done song swaps with all the country guys. The country guys will bring me in to do song swaps because none of them like to talk, and so like
Mhm.
I'll come in there and just do basically stand up comedy and play 1985 and like, so good night, see you guys later. But he and I have been friends for a very long time, and his kids are fans of mine, and my kids are fans of his, which is, it makes it even cooler. And then there's Frank Turner, who is my favorite songwriter of this generation, an English punk country guy, and he and I did some stuff together over the.
English punk country.
That's what
So
he is.
that's
Yeah,
why I love this. This is
yeah.
so great.
Yeah, he's English punk country, and yeah, he's more rock now. I mean, he's one of those guys that reinvents himself every album.
Yeah.
Um, and then yeah, my the guitar player for the Descendants played guitar on one of the songs. And that's my favorite band. And so yeah, but as I said, I kind of had to stop there. I mean, I had ends with so big because there's so many people I could have asked, just because being in this industry for so long.
Right.
And so I do have an arsenal of people in my back pocket to do stuff with as I move forward in the industry. But I didn't want it to just be like a duets record. or something where people would be like, oh, okay, he's just, where it was a flex or anything like that. So it's kind of like the first 4 people we asked said yes, and we had to stop. That's pretty much what happened.
Huge. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't get much bigger than that. So it's so
Yeah.
great. Tell me about, you did the country to country in London, and you were performing with like Miranda Lambert and Luke Combs. How was that? And tell me more about that experience.
So we do really well. Bowling for Soup does really well in the UK. In fact, in some parts we do like soccer arenas. Like we do very, very well over there. In fact, just came back from a huge tour, and we will be going back around Christmas time. It's just, that country has been great to us. So the same guy who brought us over to our very first festivals over there is still our promoter over there. He's moved around quite a bit from different places, but now he's the head of live events for AEG, which is, not too shabby. And he heard the country stuff, and he was just like, I didn't even know you were doing this. He's like, we have a festival in a month. You want to come play it? I'm like, sure, sounds great. And he goes, now here's the deal. This is going to be an older crowd, and so don't be surprised if none of them know who you are. And I was like, Steve, we've been coming over there for 23 years. How old could they possibly be?
Right.
Like what? I mean, because what are you saying right now? Like,
right.
And anyway, he would just don't be surprised. And my band got up there first I played 2 shows, and the band got up there. And then when I walked on, it was obvious that everybody, 3/4 of the audience knew exactly who I was. And it was so cool, very receptive. And what was really cool for me is my album came out on a Friday, and the Saturday I played in this tent, packed. I mean, you couldn't have got another person in there, but at that point, none of them had ever heard any of my stuff because it wasn't out yet. And that was a paid event. The next day, on the Sunday, I played on the free stage called the Town Hall stage. And so Bowling for Soup fans had already had the record for 2 days, and they just packed the place, and they were singing along to all the songs and stuff. And so
I love it.
it was it felt really, really good. It's little things like that, that where you just are like, oh man, that felt really, really, really good.
Yeah, it's a lot of hard work that's finally paid off, and you're getting to do another side of yourself, which is exciting too. And to have your listeners be on board is so awesome.
Yeah, and sorry to cut you off, but you don't expect. I've definitely learned one thing, over the course of Bowling for Soup being a very, in my eyes, very, very successful. And the different side projects I've done, I've done an album. I have another band called Jaret and Kelly, and I have another band called Jarinus. Jarinus is like this heavy metal joke band, and Jaret and Kelly is just me and my friend Kelly from the Dolly Rots, and she and I doing a whole album of duets and things like that. So, but there's been things like that I've done over the years, and you learn real quick that it's not a perfect transition, there's, you think to yourself, okay, this, at first, I mean, and of course this is early on, but you're like, at the time, maybe like, okay, we've got 500,000 followers on Facebook, so we should at least be able to get 10%, and
right.
It's just not like that. First of all, it's not like that because Facebook won't allow that. Like they're not going to, you can't even get to 10% of your followers on a post, first of all.
Yeah.
Secondly, it's just, some people, they like Bowling for Soup, it's like, so I don't take for granted those fans that are, that sort of just like whatever I do, and that always is special to me. But it's been cool. I mean, the record came out in March. It's been super cool for me. Just the organic build that it's had, and like new people who are just like, I didn't even know you were in Bowling for Soup. This is amazing, and that kind of thing. And it's those are when you hear that, you're just like, okay, all right. So
that's a perfect mix of knowing that your followers and your audience is following because of you, but then music is good enough to stand on its own where it's reaching people that it normally wouldn't. That's I think like when you put those two things together, that just makes you who you are too, which is why you're so successful.
Well, and I appreciate that. And yeah, I mean, obviously, as we switch into mental health, it's, my, I have a very, very loyal following myself, because of all of these things that I've done. And not to mention, as we segue here, into what you want to talk about, what you're thinking.
Well, background for my listeners, I met you through Cabrera. We met a few years ago at the Vino Palooza event that he's put on. You're one of the funnier people that I've met in my life, and I've met a lot of funny people.
Well, thank you.
My new motto is the more trauma I have, the funnier I get. So I'm like, bring it on.
Right.
I just keep getting funnier through everything that I go through. And you've been a big advocate for mental health. Are you comfortable sharing like what you've struggled with and how you've gotten through that and where you're at now?
Yeah, I can give you the whole rundown.
That's where I like.
But what's funny about the trauma thing is that like I sort of have lived in this bubble of like, I'm fine, and I'm actually in therapy now. And when we unlock certain things, sometimes I'm just like, my God, this has got to be why I hide behind humor all the time. Like, this is 100%. Crazy. Turn this off. Turn it off. But obviously you always walk out of there feeling like, oh man, I'm glad I got that off my chest. But see where to start. I mean, I guess I should really start when I started having symptoms of things. I mean, I had a good childhood, but a lot of things in my childhood that, could be on Jerry Springer kind of shit. So, can I cuss? I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cuss.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
No,
yeah. Fuck yeah. Let's cuss. All right.
Fuck yeah. Cuss.
So, but I somehow managed to pretty much compartmentalize all of it, and I have brothers and sisters that weren't as good at that, and that, had a lot of issues, whether it be substances or mental or whatever. And I just managed to sidestep all of that. I actually just got asked yesterday on an interview, like, okay, what's the first drug you ever did? And I don't mean pot. What's the first drug you did after pot? And I go, I've never done that. Like I'm so boring in that world. Like I've never done any drug other than, and I don't really even do pot very much. Yeah. It's like, it's like a suburban thing now. Like you do it with your suburban friends and then watch Borat, like, that's just how boring my life is. And, but I, in about 2012-ish, 2011, 2012, my marriage, started falling apart. And I started seeing, my family and all of that flash in front of me. And I started making a lot of really rash decisions. I was going to break Bowling for Soup up to try and save it all, which obviously is not the right thing to do. But I did it. And so I started alienating my friends and I started alienating my band. And that divorce did go through. I went into a custody battle. I got into a new relationship. I moved to a new town. All of the things that doctors say, one of these could put you, into a depressive or anxious state. I did 12 or 14 of them, all at once. And it started with anxiety during all of that, and then it became crippling anxiety to where on my weeks with my kids, basically what I could do was get them up and get them to school, feed my dogs, and then go right back to bed in the fetal position. And that's it. And so I was in really bad shape for the better part of a couple of years. And again, really just ignoring my band. Honestly, I will never point to it, but some of the things that I was putting out there or the shows that I was playing, I'm embarrassed about it. Like again, people like it, so I'm not ever going to point it out, but I'm not like the happiest with it, or I wasn't happy, and I definitely wasn't happy with who I was. And finally my wife now, was like, you gotta go talk to somebody. You have to go talk to somebody. And she had been so patient through all of this. And I did. And so at first it seemed like, okay, counseling is going to work, but man, just the anxiety and just these, what would become the diagnosis of severe depression. I couldn't get my head around it, because I'm like, I'm the funny guy. Like, why do I feel like this? Because I could still turn it on. I could still walk into a room and light it up if I wanted to. But then I'd go, like, by the time I got in the car, I was in tears, So I ended up talking to my doctor about it. And so through therapy and about 2 years of trying and figuring out the medication levels and all of that, I live now, and of course this has been several years ago. I have it pretty under control. I have my good days and bad days. I have a thing where sometimes I'll just start crying for no reason. And my doctor said, well, are you writing good songs? And I said, yeah. And he goes, well, I can make that crying thing go away, but that might take some of that inspiration away too. So can you live with it? And I was like, yeah, I can live with it. It's fine. Because I really am on a roll right now. Like, I'm writing insane songs, not just for me, but for other things and stuff. But yeah, it was really, really rough. And so I think the best part of all of it was when I actually started talking to people about it, and the relief, like on my best friend Linus, of hold on. Sorry.
You're good.
Just the relief for everybody else.
That
I was finding a way to get some help,
totally.
and I was becoming myself again, and so, you sort of come out on the other side of that, and you're like, man, I mean, my kids could probably see that something was wrong. Like, my wife definitely knew that something was wrong. My best friend knew that something was wrong. My band, like, I had to, like, sit down with them and go, okay, y'all know when I did this and this and this and this, I'm really sorry I did that. Like, you remember when I was going to break us up and we did a farewell tour in England, like, I'm really sorry I did that, because but that's where I was. Like, I was almost just sort of like, I was never, by the way, I want to make sure that everybody knows I was never suicidal or anything. So sometimes my verbiage can sort of be a little bit misleading, but I was definitely going off of a cliff, like, I was trying to, I was obviously self-sabotaging. I was obviously, just trying to damage relationships and push people away. And,
well, being suicidal is what we all see as the pinnacle of being, like, in the worst mental health of your life. But also, like, there's that line, and I've been there too after my dad passed away, where, like, you're not there, but you're doing everything in your capacity to make sure that everything in your life goes wrong.
100%.
And I feel like that's such a terrible place to be in, where you just keep, pushing on the bruise and keep making the same mistakes when you know better, or sometimes you can't see that there's the other side. But the fact that you can have this hindsight about knowing how you were being perceived means that you've done the work, Jaret. And that's such a huge step, like, because when you're in the thick of it, you think you're fine and you think you're putting on a good face and that you're fooling people, but you're not, and like, there's been moments in my life where it's been like, no, everyone knows what's going on. You're the only one that thinks you're fooling anyone. And to be able to come out on the other side is why we do the work, and why there's therapy, and why you're so able to speak out about it now, because this is going to continue to help people,
100%. So I actually, once I started to feel better, it was not something that I ever really wanted to put out into the world. I actually thought, because of social media, that the bounce back I would get, like, would be very, very negative, because I'm in a silly band, like, and I was really worried about, the funny guy, the funny, oh, what are you, sad because you got a bunch of hit songs or whatever? Oh, you gained weight.
Yeah.
Wow, all of
Sure.
that. And I was just
Sure.
ready for that. And have I had some of that? 100%. But I got asked to do a thing for my friend Pete, who runs Foundation 45 in Dallas, and to tell my story. And I didn't really know what I was going to do. I knew that there was going to be a camera, and I had never really talked about it. And I just let it all out. And I was like, man, the reaction that I got from it was something where I was like, well, I can't not talk about this now. Like, there were people going like, I literally called my doctor after reading your interview, or like, I am making a deal. I'm taking, my wife and I are going to counseling, or whatever it was, just over and over and over again. And now that's every day of my life. Like, dude, I'm lost. I don't know what to do, yada, yada. Well, you got to talk to somebody. You got, that's, that's a big part of my day now. So
Yeah.
Foundation 45 is important to me. I do a lot of it with them. I'm on the board of directors for Punk Rock Saves Lives now, which is we do so much stuff, mental health, and we swab at concerts for bone marrow transplants, and
Oh,
just
wow. Amazing.
really, it's become a big part of my life. It's become something that people pull me aside and ask me about all the time, because quite frankly, there's this stigma, and people are, you kind of got to help them break out of the cage, so to speak, and be like, dude, just get out there, tell your family what's going on, because I alienated some of my friends so much that like we didn't speak. I went like almost a year without speaking to my best friend on the planet. Like, and
Wow.
I mean, that's crazy, but it just,
Mhm.
I had literally just pushed him away so much. And I ran the risk of doing that in my relationship, and I ran the risk of doing that, with my band, and I wasn't far off from actually doing what I was setting out to do, and that's just completely isolating myself. And
Mhm.
thank God I was able to have the strength to and the backup and the support to go out there, and then especially once I was getting help and communicating about it, just seeing that everybody was like, oh man, this is great, instead of like, oh yeah, right, or what, what I mean, let's face facts. Some people don't understand depression because they've never felt it. Like, I can't explain to you what the flu feels like, and I can explain it to you. And if you've never had it, you'd have a decent idea of part of it, but you still don't know until you get it and you go, oh shit. Remember when you were telling me about this flu? Holy
Mhm.
crap, you can't describe things, like that. You can't describe physical things just like you can't describe mental things just like you can't describe physical things. And so,
Right.
like me telling somebody, about what anxiety feels like is like me trying to describe what a stubbed toe feels like.
Mhm.
It's not, it's so what people that don't experience these things have to do is just be open and understanding, and be a good listener. That's what I tell my audience every night. It's like, hey, if you don't experience it, that's great, but be a good listener, and just be a good friend. And
Mhm.
we could kind of all do that in all aspects of our lives this day and age. Like, you can just,
100%. The things that we don't understand. Yeah, just
yeah,
listen and
just listen, just be a good person, and be a good friend, and be there.
yeah. Do you have anything? I know there are things that I have to do if I'm going through a funk, or if I feel
Mm.
like I'm kind of like teetering the line of being in a depression, that you can do to get yourself out of it.
Sometimes, the first thing that I just talked to my daughter about this weekend. She's 19, and we went on vacation together, and she was asking me about some of the anxiety I've so generously passed down to her. And she was asking me about a few things
How
here and
nice
there.
of you.
I know,
So
I'm the
sweet.
best ever. And so first of all, I don't actually know my triggers. Like, I don't, like, I can't pinpoint it. Like, a lot of people can say, oh, it's like anytime I talk to this person or I do this or whatever. Like, because that's
But
just
that's depression. That's how you know it's clinical depression, because
exactly
it's sometimes it's not triggered. Sometimes you can have everything going for you and you're still just running really low. And that's what
100%.
depression is, you
Yeah,
know?
100%. And you're so right. And it's like, and it's frustrating
Yeah, yeah.
again, and it's as you said earlier, like as a funny person, as someone who expects, everybody sort of expects me to lead the table, so to speak, like if we're at it's like, okay, well, he'll have something funny to say. And sometimes you don't feel like being funny, and
Yeah.
but yes, there is. I drink a lot of water. I try to, I'm not really an outside person, but I will, if I'm not feeling good, I will try to get some air. I have some breathing things that I do.
That's always the go-to for me too.
My big thing though is just making those around me aware of what's going on. So, because I think what happens with me is I'm not really alone much. I mean, I'm either at home with my family or I'm on the road with my band. And so I've learned this actually through therapy recently, is that my body language is pretty, it's very, I can be very aggressive body language wise. And I wear it, so like everybody can tell what's wrong, but a lot of people are scared to ask me. And plus, sometimes if you ask me what's wrong, I can't tell you, and then I get frustrated or whatever. So it's just, I will normally take a step back, and it may take me an hour or two, but then I'll come back, go, hey, I'm just really anxious right now, or hey, I'm off today or whatever. And normally when they go, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. Anything I can do? Nope. All right, man. Well, and normally that really helps me. And so it's just, again, I think it all starts with communication. I really do. I think it's.
I agree. Well, and I used to feel like a burden when I would have to tell my friends or family what I was going through. And I kind of had switched my mindset to, instead of viewing it like that, I view it as an exercise in vulnerability, which I think is what we all need to be striving to do more. And that's you being vulnerable and saying like, hey, I'm just showing you where I'm coming from. And that helps you too. It helps the other person understand where you're coming from. But I feel like it kind of takes all the pressure off of you by being like, I'm just being vulnerable with you and telling you what's on my mind.
Vulnerability is tough because it's hard to be vulnerable if you don't have trust. So it's important that, and again, that's therapy talking.
No, it's so true.
But, it's like, I didn't know this, but apparently I am a very, untrusting person because of some trauma in my life or whatever. And I just assumed that I had it all together and just didn't need anybody. And apparently that's not the way that it is. Apparently it's just that I have a problem being vulnerable because I have this protective wall around me or whatever. And I've learned all this over the last year or two. But yeah, the vulnerability thing is tough because, again, you need that trust with those people. So it's just so important. And that's why I always say, look, if you don't have an understanding brother or sister or parent or friend, then start with a doctor, just literally go to your practitioner and lay it all out there, and you'll feel better instantly because they just nod, because they understand, because you're not the only one and you're not alone and you think you are. And, again, it's really funny that nobody feels things for the first time anymore, like that's just not a thing. We just, it's all, you can find help, you can figure it out, you can get relief. And man, I'll tell you, I don't ever want to be back there again. It's I was coming off of the best 10 years ever. And, you talk about like rock star shit and, just kids being born and just, it was just amazing. And then all of a sudden here I am and I'm like, what is happening to me? Like, why, it was bad. The thing that sucks the worst, is that a lot of people get depressed and then they lose a bunch of weight. Well, I got depressed and gained a bunch.
I'm the same way. I gain weight when I'm depressed too.
It's the worst.
Yeah.
So, but it's funny. I've come to grips with it, And I'm just like, look, as long as my mind is good and I'm seeing my doctor regularly and I'm not in any danger of killing over anytime soon, I just gonna have to just be me, like,
Yeah.
and
What conversations are you having with your kids about mental health and their mental health, and trying to prioritize that and kind of sharing with them where you've been?
my daughter's 19. She's at a place where she's dealt with enough things where she's open about it and can talk about it. So I'm super open with her about it.
That's
Uh,
great.
they all know that they can come to me or my wife anytime with anything, and like literally, if they need just an ear, I another thing that I've learned in therapy is to listen and not try to fix everything. Apparently, I'm a fixer. And so I have really gotten good at just being a good listener and not trying to
Mhm.
give my input all the time,
Yep.
which I've always tried to be as a father. Um, but so yeah, I mean, she's comfortable talking about things, and she's she's doing a lot of good for her own mental health. My son is 16, or my oldest is 16, and he, I think he's just still trying to figure out what's going on with him. But he
Yeah.
knows from a mental health standpoint that if he ever needs anything, that I'm here, or that, if he wants to go talk to somebody, that option is there, and all of that. And I'm very vocal about all that. And then right now, our 9-year-old, we don't really have to worry about him because he literally speaks his feelings all the time, and he tells us literally how he feels, and it's pretty amazing. Other people will hear him talk and just go, "Did he just say that?" And yeah, he just told you that makes him sad, and you should not do that. And so, but yeah, we're very open about it in this family. I mean, fortunately and unfortunately, it's so everywhere right now. From the fortunate side of things, I'm just so glad that people are talking about it, because I can't imagine going through what I went through, 20 years ago. Um,
Right. Right.
and then, unfortunately, it's its own epidemic, and especially in our world,
Mhm.
that you and I have chosen to, or music and
Yeah,
entertainment and all of those things. We lose somebody every week, man. It's crazy, and it just seems so preventable.
it does.
um
Well, but you're doing the right thing by being open and talking about it. That's all you can really do, is just continue to share your own experiences.
yeah, and
And I
that's,
applaud you
again,
for that.
thank you very much. Well, and you too. i
Or,
i applaud you back as well, because I too watch your videos, and I've taken so many makeup tips from you. I
oh, I'm
am
so glad. I do it for you. I do it just for you. I know you love them.
Yes, you
Okay,
do.
we're gonna end in a little lighter. I have a couple more questions and then we'll wrap it up. But I always ask my guests if they had a playlist of their life,
Okay.
like 5 songs that would be in the movie of your life, or that just really had an impact on you. It doesn't have to be 5, but do you have a few off the top of your head that just like define you as a
Mhm.
person?
Yeah, for sure. So none of this is going to be topically. It's going to be about just my journey and my life.
Yeah, yeah,
First of all, is going to be John Cougar Mellencamp, "Hurt So Good," and "Jack and Diane." That's one song because it was the same album.
yeah.
Because that actually got me to like start buying actual music. Because the first album I ever bought was the Grease soundtrack, but when I heard
Hell yeah,
John Mellencamp, I was like, "Oh my God, this is so cool!" And so
yeah.
I'm gonna go there, and then "Crazy Train," which is
Okay.
that's what got me into like actually wanting to be in music or whatever. And then I'm gonna go from the band Descendants, "Suburban Home," because that's what got me to realize that punk rock was where I needed to be, that I could play
Love that.
fast and sing about fun stuff
Mhm.
and girls and stuff, but still be aggressive and have fun. And then the next one would be "Imagine," which I realize is super cheesy, but that
No.
song actually got used in my early therapy, and it became even a more important song to me than it was already.
Yeah.
It kind of like my original therapist. we used that song a lot and broke it down a lot and stuff. And it really, it helped me make a lot of sense of where I was and all of that. And then I guess finally the thing would, the last one, the creme de la creme, would be We Are the Champions, because I am so happy with every aspect of my life, and I love my band and my family, and I really do feel like I'm on top of the world.
I love that. Okay, perfect segue since you're so positive. It's my last question of the podcast.
Okay.
What keeps you looking up? What keeps you positive? What keeps you going?
So I am chronically positive.
Yeah.
I am positive sometimes to my own detriment. I am literally like, when I play golf with people, they're like, I just go, there's no way you're going to hit that tree. Like, you can't possibly hit that tree. And that's every aspect of my life. Like, it's going to be fine. Everything's going to be fine all the time. And I'm very, very positive. And honestly, it's a decision I made. I'll never forget this. In the 8th grade, I was in a really bad mood. And I got back in my room after like saying something mean to my mom, and I felt guilty about it. And I was just like, why am I in a bad mood? I can't really even figure out why I'm in it. And then I just, that day, I was just like, just not going to be in a bad mood anymore. And I really, really strive to not ever be in a bad mood. And I do. Everybody gets in bad moods, but I'm pretty easy to snap out of it. But yes, I am. I think keeping it positive.
A decision, I think, is helpful. Like, you do have to decide to be positive.
You have to decide to be positive. Plus, but I just think if you think positive and then positive things happen around you. Like, we all know people that have that dark cloud around them, and you're just like, oh, okay, this is happening to you now. Well, it kind of makes sense, like you're
attracting it.
You attract it. It's, and I do believe that there's something to that, and so
I agree.
I say keep it positive all the time. I will forever and ever be grateful for your dad who would close out his shows with those. He did some really great things for my band and was always so kind to me. I think I've told you the story where I was backstage at a show the Fray were playing, and he was taking a picture with the Fray, and there was a couple of jive people there for whatever reason. Maybe it was a support band, something or whatever. And they were all posing for a picture, and I was just standing there, whatever. And your dad goes, "Oh, we got to get Jaret here. And you could just see the look on the other two people's face. And he was treating me as an equal. And I'll never forget that. And I do that kind of thing for people any chance I get. And I always, always have your dad's face in my mind whenever I'm doing that.
That's so nice. That's what so many people say about him, is that he was so inclusive and he always met people where they were at. And those little small actions that you like, it's not that big of a deal to do it, but look at the impact it has, that's a good lesson for us all.
We would be at those radio shows, and other DJs with not a finger measurement of his success would be holier than thou and high and mighty and all of that. And he stopped at every single person that made eye contact or whatever, stopped and talked and gave them the time of day and made sure that he had a conversation with someone who wanted to talk to him. And again, I learn from things like that. I'm 50 years old now, and I'm still learning whenever I see someone who is just a gracious human being. I just want to try and be more like that.
Well, I feel that way about you, Jaret.
Well, thank you very much. And you know what? I feel the same.
You're so sweet. This is so awesome. Thank you so much for your vulnerability. I know it's tough to talk about that kind of stuff, but I know it just is going to have such a huge impact on people. And I really just admire what you're doing. And I admire how open you are about talking about it. And
you got it. Well, anytime, have me back anytime. And I think you're great too. And I love this concept of your show, and good luck with it. And
Pimp yourself out for my listeners. What's your social so they can go find you?
Guys, here's the first thing you need to do is go listen to the new Bowling for Soup album. You're going to love it, even if you don't like us. And then my new country album is out there everywhere. All you got to do is put my name, but put the Ray in there. It is my real name, Jaret Ray Reddick, but we live an algorithm life now, and I got to separate myself from all the other stuff. So Jaret Ray Reddick, just woke up. It's out everywhere. You can find me everywhere on the internet at JARET2113, or I'm on TikTok as Jaret Reddick, and I'm hilarious. Come follow me. And
He is hilarious.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for taking the time, Jaret. You're the best.
Thank you. See you later.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to subscribe and rate. Keep looking up anywhere you stream your podcasts. And to stay up to date on all my latest episodes, you can follow at KLU Podcast on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, or on my website at carolinekraddick.com. And always remember, keep looking up because that's where it all is.